Gonna dive into this car today and see if I can't knock off a few to-do items from my pile of parts here. I'm gonna start with this back right wheel because this needs the most. It needs brakes, it needs a wheel bearing, and it needs the strut because the strut is bent, causing the wheel to tip in at the top. So I got my wheel off, and next I'm gonna pull that brake caliper. These are 14s back here. Everything Toyota is 12, 14, 17, and 10 for the most part. Alright, those are out. That comes out nice. Hang that back here. Yeah, not much left on that one. A little bit left on that one. And it's 2 14 millimeter bolts on the back here. I used 9/16. 14 was a little sloppy, but that doesn't even make sense because Toyota, I don't know. We're just doing what works. And what works is 9/16. Okay, both of those are off. This comes off. Everything here looks okay. These slides are not stuck. We gotta get this rotor off. It doesn't look like it has any kind of set screw. It's got a rubber adjuster plug. Let me get a big hammer. With that off, you can see that the parking brakes are good enough to use again. And now I'm going to see how to get this hub bearing off, because that was one of the things that's wrong on this side. These are pretty easy. There's 14 millimeter bolts that you can line up right here. Do want to show you, but they're pretty easy. That goes right in there. And out it comes. There's the loose bolt. So I'm guessing there's one at the bottom too. A little bit of fish in here. Alright, I'm going to pull all this e-brake stuff apparently. That's okay, and then we get the connector back there. So to get a little slack on that electrical, I'm going to pull this 12 millimeter bolt. I'm going to need to pull that to do this strut anyway, so no extra work needed there. So with that 12 out of the way, that frees up this brake line, and we have a little tenor back here for the wire. Okay, so once that 10's out, that frees up some slack in this, and I've got this just sitting on top of my impact, so it's not pulling. So this cable's got some slack in it, and there's a little tab in here. Push that with a screwdriver, and then pull on the. This is a two-hander. Sorry, pull on the connector. So that pops right out. That gives this thing some more room to work with. And we got to take all the brake stuff apart. Okay, pulled back these two springs with some needle nose pliers. Then I'm going to pull these retaining springs, but the tool designed for that doesn't work for this application, so that's going to be 2 hands off camera. Compress that and twist that little thing inside on both sides. Alright, that wasn't too bad. I popped this one loose and left this one alone, so I ended up with the back little seat where that spring goes. It's got this little clip that sits in the side of the brake shoe. That's the front piece, that's the spring. One of my top springs popped out. But that's as far as you need to go with it. You do not have to take the other one off. You do not have to mess with the cable. You just give it a few whacks on the back, destroying your electrical connector, but it's junk anyway. And then that'll pop right out of there. So this is the old bearing and wheel sensor assembly. So that's out. Now I can just grab the new one and hopefully it's the same in the match. One thing to note, these are 2 different part numbers, the 2 back hubs that I bought as a set. And the only difference that I can see, or the easy way to tell them apart, because they're not marked left and right anywhere on here, is the plug for the sensor is different. I think that may be the only difference. But you see with the 2 closer together ears at the top and the wider ones at the bottom. This one's on the right on our old one, and then too close to the other top, farther apart on the bottom, it's on the opposite side. So I'm going with that. This is my passenger side, right side one. So with one shoe out of the way, you can just sneak this in place. You don't have to fully disassemble everything emergency brake if you don't need to. And why would you if you don't need to? So with that been done, I'm going to plug back into there and remount this up on here before I reassemble the emergency brake stuff. I got my sensor plugged back in. Heard that nice click. And I got my 4 bolts here lining up with the large holes and shooting the socket through there. So the hub is on, and I'm just going to put this parking brake stuff back together. Yeah, then to pull the strut, there's 2 nuts and bolts that go through here. These are 19 on both sides, and the bolt faces the front of the car. So once those are out, then you pull this sway bar link. There's a Allen, you put an Allen key in the center, and then a 14mm wrench on the outside on that nut to turn it. In hindsight, if you're doing the struts, you probably want to do this first before you get all dirty. But the back of the seat needs to come out. The lower cushion, there's just a clip on either side like that. That little white thing. Yank that up and it comes forward. Back under here, you're looking for this. This is a 12mm right here. There's 4 of those going across. That frees up the seat back. You're just going to lift up on this. You're trying to get that hook there out of that little pocket. Yeah, I wrestled with it a little bit and I couldn't get the center one to release. And I just figured this was an easy way. I took that headrest and wedged it in here. And then where you're going is behind here, behind this little bracket, right here. That stud with a nut on it. There's 3 of those, and that's the top of the strut. These are 12mm, and best bet is to get the 2 way in the back and save the front one for last so you can reach it easier. Okay, then what worked for me was to wiggle this free of the knuckle and then go backwards with it until you can get this out. And then, ta-da, it's out. So if you just have quick struts with the full assembly with the spring, you're just going to bolt it back in. But if you're cheap like me, you got to swap that over to the new strut. And here's where it's bent, what I was trying to show in the other video. It's bent right here. You can definitely see that. There's an angle right here, and it goes that way. That's what was making this wheel kick in at the top like that. Old strut, 2 new struts. I hope this is right because the other one has this pointy effect on the spring perch, and this one does not. Deal with that when I get to the other side. But it looks like it matches up as far as where the sway bar link goes and the bracket that holds the brake line and the ABS sensor wiring. So I'm going to get everything swapped over. Okay, use my spring compressor, compress the spring. It's a 19mm bolt on the end of the shaft here. And just pull that whole thing free. And then I want to save this rubber piece, transfer that to the new one. I'm lucky that everything here is in really good shape. The spring's not rusty, the rubber stuff's all in good shape. I'm a little hesitant to use an aftermarket spring because I don't know if that's going to make it ride weird or anything. You know, it could be softer or stiffer. I'd rather just stick with the factory stuff even though it's got a lot of miles on it. So let me get that swapped over to the new one. Slip this rubber piece back on the bottom and make sure it lines up with those 3 holes, and then make sure the spring sits in the exact same spot. So I need to rotate this just slightly right there, and then this is up through. So now I just got to reattach it with the nut. There is this little sleeve spacer that goes right there before you put the nut back on. Alright, I got that nut back on there. And now I'm just going to again verify that this spring is sitting in the exact spot where the old one was. And then just loosen these few cranks at a time. Just a little bit on each side so it goes down even. Alright, that one's free. That one's still got a little tension on it. I'll swap over. So, I mean, this thing's a little tore up, but I don't know how much that actually does. Once the weight of the car is on it, it'll compress this a little bit. So, that's ready to go back in. Alright, this is back into place. I came up this way, and you want to just look up in here and line up the holes, those 3 studs with the holes. And once you've done that, slide it so this is loosely here, and then I just hand started those 3 12mm nuts at the top, and then I'm going to get this lined up in here, and then I'll worry about the sway bar link. Yeah, I was able to. You can still push down on the knuckle. There's movement in here to get that bottom one in place. Tap that in just slightly, and then this can pivot. You can push on it, tap on that to get that one to line up. Alright, now that both of those are started and lined up, I'm just going to blast it right through. That one's good. This one's not quite lined up there, so I'm gonna need two hands to apply pressure here to give it a little twist. Okay, those are back in. Use a 19 to hold it here, and then hit it with the impact on the other side. So the strut is in place. The next thing I can do, well, I can reinstall these ABS line and brake line clips. 10mm on that small bolt in the back for the ABS wire. Okay, that back one's all set. And then this front is a 12 that holds the brake rubber line in place. Done. Then I'm going to snug up my 3 12mm bolts up above. Don't forget those. There's one here, one right behind it, and then one over here. Alright, then to get this sway bar link to line up, I just put I've got the car sitting on this jack stand here, and then I'm just using my jack to lift up on this knuckle here, and that allowed this to come up here and line up. Same scenario, I'm just holding this with the Allen wrench and tighten this with a 14. I'm fortunate that this is turning. A lot of times these are stuck and you have to cut them off. This one's, the boot's a little bit ratty, but there wasn't any play in it. So I'm just going to send it. If it makes noise, I'll change it later, but I got enough to do on this car. That Allen wrench, I used the 3/16. It's probably metric, but that did it for me. You can. And then once you get as tight as you can by hand, I just gave it a few more ooga-dooga with the impact. These aren't tight; they make all kinds of racket. Okay, parking brake stuff is all back together. That thing is, I don't know, meant for people with smaller, stronger hands than me. That was tough to get lined up. I ended up at this angle, grasping this with these needle nose vice grips and holding that there while I worked the pin in from the back. So that's how I compressed this little spring. This was all one motion. Anyway, I got my new race car part here. Can't beat the price on these. Drilled slotted rotors and pads, shipped to the house for under $50 for the whole set. And that's another Auto Shack right there. Auto Shack. So we'll see how that goes. You can't beat the price. Like I said, these parts are all shared with the Camry and the Avalon. So there's lots of aftermarket stuff that's cheap for the Lexus. Hopefully they work out. So I am just going to start by putting a little fluid film on the back here just to keep it from rusting in place. Soak that down. And then get the brake clean here. Actually, I had that in the wrong place. You want to rotate this around so that is lined up with one of the holes that allows you to hit the hub bolts, so that when and if you need to get to your parking brake, you get a clear shot in there. And then this just goes right in there. And then I was curious if these were directional, because that tells you whether it's a gimmick or not. And if you were paying much attention, you know I put this one on wrong. Duh. So here, directional. Is this one opposite? Let's see. Yeah, I'm getting mixed messages here because I opened the other one out of curiosity and it's in a bag labeled passenger side, which is where we are. And then I'm looking at the directions. And it looks like this is wrong. Alright. So we will put that one on and do it the right way. Okay, swap that over. Brake cleaned it. Put that plug in the correct location. So now I'm ready to move on to the caliper. Okay, working on my caliper bracket here. Looks like these boots are in good shape. I was able to peel these back. This one's in a little better shape than this one, but I'm gonna wire wheel that down clean, lube these up, and then new pads. This is also Auto Shack stuff. They came with the hardware clips. Seems like they gave me way too many. I don't know. They all look the same to me. I don't know if there's two different styles or what. Yeah, there is. This is a little different than this one, but that's more like this. This one's different, so I'm going to use these. Forget about those. And it also came with these little clips here, which I think are the wear indicators. Let me grab an old pad. Yeah, so those clip on the side. Those are just the wear indicators. We're almost there, not quite. So I'm going to do that wire wheeling and some brake lube. So let me work on all this and I'll show you when it's done. So I went ahead and duplicated the way those wear clips go on there, and just to give, yeah, I guess it was time to do those. They might have a few thousand miles left in them, but these have easily got 4 times the meat left on them, the new ones. Okay, everything's ready to go here. Wire brush these, lube the pins, those move nice and smooth now. Wire brushed behind the hardware there, and I was wrong before. These are the correct ones for this car anyway, at least from this kit. The other ones don't fit in correctly. And compressing the caliper using the old pad and this tool. I know people get upset, like, don't push the old fluid back up in there. I'm going to flush the whole thing after anyway, so no old stuff's going to be sitting in here. Once I get it back together, I'll crack open the bleeder and pump through at least a quart of fluid, flush it out good. So I'm going to finish compressing that, hang this bracket, and then set the pads in place. New pads are in place. That little wear indicator goes on the down or back side on both sides. And I'm just going to put a little bit of lubricant on here, on both of those, and then around the piston there, just where it makes contact. And then I should be able to button this up. Caliper back on. And then the 2 bolts here tighten down. Those are 9/16 or 14 millimeter. Tighten those 2 bolts down. Get ready to put the wheel back on. I'm not going to do an exact carbon copy of the other side. It all came apart the same way pretty much. I'm just going to address this little tab behind here that this is connected to is bent. And then at some point this felt liner pulled out, so I'm going to reattach that. The thing I wanted to show is this strut does have that little point on it, so that is a correct match. And this strut, it's a little oily, like it's starting to leak, so I guess it's good I do both of them. Passenger side and driver's side are done. So now I'm going to bleed and flush these. They really don't need to be bled, but there's a rubber piece that comes off of here. Looks like this. I've never seen such a substantial bleeder cap as on this car. So it takes some prying to get that off. And then either an 8mm or a 5/16 to crack that bleeder loose. And they both came loose very easily. So I guess this cap did its job. Up here at the reservoir, I'm gonna siphon out what I can out of this because it's pretty dark. There's a little strainer in here that has to come out to be able to get down on the bottom. You gotta pry this little tab over and then grab this with something like needle nose plier. It's just a little strainer. Really not necessary, but I'll put it back when time comes. And then I'm just going to use this little tube down into the deepest part of that. And then just siphon it out into a container. Okay, it's siphoning. I just usually just do it this way. Use the tiniest little tube I can find so I can get down into the way back corners of this thing. So that'll take a few minutes. Okay, siphoned that down quite a bit. I'm not sure how you get into that. I'm not sure how you get into that back chamber there. But I'm going to top it off. I'm going to crack this bleeder loose, and then I get this tube run up over this spring and then clamped into this container. I'm going to just pump it about 20 or 30 pumps till it starts coming out clean here. Be able to see it in that tube. It'll go from being black to almost clear. About 20 pumps is about what you can do before you start running too low in there. Okay, filled that up to the line. I'm going to put the little strainer back in. That goes a certain way. Goes with this tab facing the back of the car, facing the windshield. And then this cap. I'm going to open this bleeder. And I'm going to go pump that pedal inside the car. See it come out clean. Alright, so it's pretty clean now. You can see the dirty old stuff mixed in with the cleaner stuff. So I'm just going to tighten up this bleeder. Pull that hose. Let it drip. Just snug, not crazy. Snug plus a little, I guess. And this guy back on here until it clicks. And I can pull this whole thing out here and go to the other side. Same setup over here. This side's jacked up a little higher, so we're just gonna set it there so it squirts in. Open the bleeder. Bit like that. Head back up under the hood. And then we're down about this far, so top that back off again. There we go. Okay, I'm going to do 20 more pumps and then check it. Okay, pretty good flush there. What's coming out here is clear like water, so that's good. Close this. Okay. Pull the hose. Pretty gross stuff in there. Right, and then put this little rubber cap back. And how much did we pump through? Probably about the same. Yeah, it's a little above that seam. I'm just about out of brake fluid, so I have enough to just top this off. Just above that line. That's okay. I still have the fronts to do eventually, so it's good enough for today. Fixed that little piece of trim that was hanging off. It was just this bolt had been ripped out of the little bracket it sits in, so that was pretty easy. Just bent the little bracket back about where it belongs. I got my tires back on, so I got the whole rear axle of this car up to 100%. I don't know if we can kind of see it here. That wheel and this wheel. This one was really teed in because of that strut before. I'm on a slant. It slants this way a little bit, so it's kind of hard to get a good shot of that, but that wheel looks pretty good to me. And then I went to put the spare tire away. If you saw the other video about this car, all the change under the back seat was like $4 and something. I found a bunch more in here. quarters and dimes even, not just pennies. So I like that. That puts us over to probably up to the 550 mark for change in this car. So that'll do it for this video. And stay tuned for the next one. I'll head up to the front where most of the trouble is. To the radiator support and brackets and brakes, and the wheel bearing on this side was really shot. So that'll be the next video. Trying to put this sad, abused, neglected car back together.